Hey guys, I'm here at Urbana Grimes Airport in Urbana, Ohio. I'm sitting here with a friend of mine, Doug Smith. So I want you guys to meet Doug, and Doug, why don't you tell us a little bit about you and what you're doing here?
All right. Well, I've loved airplanes since I could walk, it seems to me, and I've always wanted to fly and be involved with airplanes. I went to flight school at University of Illinois and got all my flight ratings and my A&P license with it, and started really restoring airplanes. My first project was on a Champ in college, and been kind of restoring airplanes ever since.
That's pretty awesome. You know, a lot of times, you know, the problem is that we're having is the antique airplanes that we have, there's no one able to work on them.
Right. Restore
them and keep the history alive, and that's really where we've had the issue. I'm a very young person to be.
So am I.
Yeah, we're both very young, right? And but I don't have the technical skills that you have to what you've been doing, and I think this project that you're working on right now is fascinating, and I think people would enjoy seeing this. So
well, it is quite the project. It is a 1929 Travelair 6000, and most of the time when I tell people a Travelair, they say, "Oh, it's a biplane."
Yeah, they say that's Dewey's airplane, right?
Yeah, one of Dewey's airplanes. And no, this is a monoplane, and it was in 1929. It was built to be an airliner. So it holds 7 seats, and 2 in the cockpit, 5 in the cabin.
Wow.
Has a 48.5-foot wingspan. It's a big airplane.
Right.
And it was sold in '29 to Pittsburgh Airways, and it carried passengers daily from Pittsburgh to Philadelphia to New York City, and for about a year and a half until the Depression hit.
Okay.
And from what I understand of the story, they were competing for an airmail contract with TWA and lost. And they went out of business. The airplane traded hands a few times. It ended up out in Montana with the Johnson Flying Service.
Okay.
And the Johnson brothers were doing a lot of flying back in the 30s and the 40s for the U.S. Forest Service and all of the support out there, and this airplane was a workhorse for them.
Well, you know, since you just said that, I know I've never mentioned this, but my new standard, guess who it was owned by?
Johnson.
Dick Johnson.
Yep.
Who
Bob's
was
brother.
One of the founders of smoke jumpers.
That's right.
Right?
That's right.
And so I have a magazine from 1936. My new standard is in it that was out in Idaho doing an air rescue.
Wow.
In National Geographic magazine, and it was owned by the Johnsons. So that's pretty, I did not know this. So this is
a Johnson airplane.
This is a sister.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right.
Okay.
So you mentioned smoke jumpers. That is probably one of the most interesting parts of this airplane's story.
Okay.
So when they would detect a forest fire, they would report it. The U.S. Forest Service would have to build a road with all their equipment. By then, the fire was out of control. And I'm not sure if it was the Forest Service or the Johnsons, but somebody came up with the idea of let's drop people out of airplanes. At the beginning of a fire, they would build a fire line, put the fire out before it got out of hand. It was much cheaper to do it that way. And they did some tests. It was going to work. And the airplane that was sitting behind us is the first airplane to drop smoke jumpers into a live fire.
Wow. That's history.
Yeah, that's history.
That's amazing history.
Yeah.
So, man, that's. I'm glad I'm sitting here having this interview. I mean, we never talked about this. So, so tell me a little bit about it. When did you get this project?
So the airplane is owned by the Mid-American Flight Museum in Mount Pleasant, Texas, and we're here in Ohio. They're in Texas, but we're kind of their restoration wing of the organization.
The northern.
Did you get that wing?
Yeah. So, it's a big wing.
Yeah, it's a big wing. So they bring airplanes up here to us, and we restore them, take them back to Texas. And this airplane arrived March 18th of last year.
Okay.
And it flew up here from Texas, and we got it. We had a lot of fun for a day or two, giving rides and things like that. I got to fly the airplane.
Yep.
And But then we brought it in the shop and tore it apart.
Yep.
And it was time. She needed some love.
Sure.
Yep. And so that's what we're doing.
I mean, most antique airplanes at this age, they definitely need a lot of work and taken care of. And the good thing about the museum, they take good care of their aircraft.
Right.
And, you know, Doug, one thing, let's back up a little bit. Let's talk about a little bit more history of where you came from. Yeah, you restored a Champion College. What else have you done to, you know, keep history alive?
So after college, my final semester of college, I moved to Dayton to be an intern at the Air Force Museum.
Man.
And boy, that was a lot of fun.
Yeah?
That was a lot of fun. Talk about history.
It's a garden spot here in Dayton.
Yeah. Well, how fantastic that is to have that in our backyard. And I stayed in Dayton and was introduced to a gentleman, Ted Teach, who lives in Dayton. And a mutual friend of ours introduced the two of us together because Ted was restoring some airplanes and I was looking for restoration projects. And so Ted hired me, and the first project we did together was his Mooney Mite.
Okay.
And what a fun little airplane that is. If you ever get a chance to fly a Mooney Mite, do it. Do it. It is fantastic. And that began a very long relationship with Ted. And I still go help Ted whenever I can. But we've been together for about 25 years all together, restoring airplanes and working on them. And so we finished his Mooney Mite. I was then hired by his neighbor at the New Carlisle Airport, Nelson Hall.
Yep.
And some other guys. And we restored together a Beechcraft AT-10 that is now on display at the National Museum of the Air Force. Yes. Yes. And it's the only one that exists. And it was a twin-engine bomber trainer during World War II.
Kind of looks like a Beech 18.
From the front.
Yeah.
But it has a single tail.
Okay.
It has a wooden fuselage, wood wings, wood vertical, and but it's only a two-seat airplane.
Oh, okay.
And so after the war, it's useless. And they parked them, and as you know, wood and fabric does sitting outside, they just deteriorated. And so it took us a few years, but we put one back together, and it's on display down there at the Air Force Museum now.
That's cool.
I helped Ted finish his pits. I bought a Mooney in the meantime that we did a restoration on, an M20C. I and a couple of guys, my wife and I ended up in South Carolina. I'm the pilot, but she was in the Air Force.
Okay.
And it's kind of the joke of the family. And while we were in South Carolina, we bought a Stearman project. And I still have that, and it's flying, and we have a lot of fun with the Stearman. And then once we came back to Ohio, Ted had a Waco INF 1930 that we did a total restoration on. And then the last airplane that I restored for Ted, we finished 2 years ago. That was a 36 Ryan ST.
And that's the one that went to Oshkosh, Grand Champion, Antique.
Yeah. Yeah.
You guys.
We won top honors with that one.
Yes, that was pretty. It's a very special airplane.
Yeah.
Very beautiful.
Yep. So, so now I've been with Scott Glover and Mid-American Flight Museum for about 1.5 years now.
Okay.
So it's just what a fantastic organization to be associated with. Just phenomenal.
Yeah, you know, I've met Scott a couple times. He's a wonderful guy. If you guys ever go to Oshkosh, you'll see he might have his a warbird there. And you'll know it's Scott because there's a line of about 50 to 100 people waiting to get into his P-51. Right. Or whatever he flies in, because he lets anybody and everybody sit in the cockpit.
That's right. He told me a couple years ago he took his Corsair to Oshkosh, and by the end of Oshkosh his legs hurt so bad because he was standing on the gull wing, letting people climb up on the wing, and that was the first time I'd ever met him, and I'm thinking internally, you let all these people sit in your Corsair? Are you kidding me? But he has such a love for aviation that he wants to share it.
Yep.
He's not a hoarder. He wants to spread it and get as many people as enthused in aviation as he can.
I've noticed that with him, and I tell you, that's what makes him a very unique and special guy.
Yeah.
So,
yes, absolutely.
Well, to get back to this travelair here, so what kind of engine is on this aircraft?
It has a Wright 975.
Okay.
And it's sitting over in the corner. In fact, in about a week, we're going to load it up, and I and one of the other volunteers are going to take it to Oklahoma to radial engines. And the engine only has about 160 hours on it since it was majored.
Okay.
But they're just going to freshen it up a little bit, change some seals. It leaks quite a bit of oil, so just freshen it up and get it going back together the way we want it for our travelair when it's done. Because we're putting a lot of work in the travelair, and we're trying to get it the way it came from the factory or better in 1929.
Well, knowing you, it's going to be better. I mean, I've seen everything that you've been doing. So let's talk about a little bit of I guess some of the things you've been working on. Everybody here that's helping you is volunteers, right?
Yes, I'm the only person on staff, and we have about 15 volunteers that come in, some on Mondays, some on Tuesdays, some in the afternoon, some in the morning, and all through the week, about 15 different people come in and are helping on the project, and these guys are just, they are so awesome. I could not do this enormity of a project without all the help that we have. And there's a couple guys over in the corner. If they're not too shy, maybe they'll say hi here in a little bit.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
But it's great to have all of them around and helping out and things like that. So the airplane arrived. It had cotton fabric on it. So the last time it was restored or recovered was in 1979, and the people put.
I was 4 years old.
Yeah, I was 9. And they put cotton fabric on it. Even in '79, they put cotton fabric on it. And Seconite was available at that point in time, but they went back with that. And so it had been on there for 39 years.
Wow.
And about double the amount of time you'd want to leave cotton on an airplane. About 20 years.
Is max?
Yeah, because the dope continues to shrink. So not at the same rate as the initial shrink, but every time you apply a coat of the tautening dope, the cotton gets a little bit tighter and tighter and tighter. And over time, the shrink rate decreases drastically.
Okay.
But it never stops. And so when we got the airplane here and we started taking things apart, that cotton, from pulling so tight, the cotton didn't fail. The structure,
right,
you know, in some parts of the airplane did. For instance, our ailerons were both the trailing edge of the ailerons had been pulled so tight that it took that. It's a wood box spar with wood ribs and cap strips with an aluminum trailing edge, just folded aluminum trailing edge, and it took that trailing edge and rolled it down about 45 degrees.
Yep. Okay.
So made real nice trim tab out there, out there on the ailerons. That's just one example. You know, we got into the fuselage, some of the areas around the windows that had pulled pretty tight, and things like that. And we found some corrosion problems, and you know, you have to think about what this airplane was. This is a working horse of an airplane.
Yep.
Treated a little bit differently than the way we might treat airplanes today.
Well, one thing, they didn't have hangars.
Right. So this airplane sat outside, out in Montana, you know, through spring, summer, fall, winter, and was flying whenever the weather was you know, able to fly, but it sat out in the weather a lot, and we found some evidence where it had been sitting out in the weather.
Okay.
And one of the things I'm holding in my hand, this is the tail wheel shock strut. And when we took the old one apart, we were not going to reuse it. It was past its prime. And so we've got a machine shop down in Tip City, not too far from here, and they're incredible.
Man.
They are just incredible. It's owned by a lady, her name's Lori, and I took the old one and I laid it on her desk, and I told her the story of the airplane, and she got so excited. She took this, and I had made a bunch of drawings for her so that way they could make it. But this is what I got back: a new brass spanner nut, a new brass plunger on the bottom, 4130 that's been hard chromed and ground down to size, welded together with the oil ports, and that's just That's the example of the kind of work that they're doing for us and the standard that we're trying to put the airplane back together.
Yeah, man, this is a jewel.
It is.
It's beautiful. Well, I wish you guys could see this, what it really looks like, but man, they did a great job with it.
Yeah. So one of the early challenges when we got the airplane and got it apart, two things that concerned me. The seats in the airplane.
Mm-hmm.
They appeared to be wicker seats. And I assigned that to one of the volunteers. So this is your job, find somebody in this big country of ours that can do that. And in kind of a roundabout via Minnesota, we ended up 30 miles away from here in Springfield. And we found a lady, and she came up here and looked at the project, and at first she said, no, it's just too much. But I followed her out to her truck.
Really?
I did. I followed her out the door, and I basically said, listen, let's give us a chance. If it's too much, we can go with plan B. But I think you can do it, because she brought some of the stuff that she had done and things like that. And she looked at it closer and realized it was a big job, but it wasn't as bad as she thought because the seat's made out of paper. So
Okay.
it's not reeds like you would think, a wicker seat sitting out on your patio or something like that. It's twisted rolled paper called fiber rush. So all the laterals are just that, it's just paper. And the vertical supports are paper with a wire core. And I don't know if you can see them behind me, Dewey, but I've got two of them in the cockpit right here. And they're beautiful. They're just beautiful. The second challenge, when we took the covers off of the longerons on the airplane and really got to looking at it, they were covered in balsa wood.
Okay.
And so we had to find balsa wood, which wasn't hard, but then we could only find it in 4-foot lengths, and that's about a 14-foot run. So we had to splice it together, and I showed you my tool that we used a while ago.
Yep.
PVC pipe, cut it in half and lined it with sandpaper, and we stood outside for hours and shaped our balsa wood.
I hope you guys have some balsa trees growing here soon. That'd be nice. Man.
So those were two of the biggest projects. We had to repair the landing gear. We had to do some repair on the wing struts and things like that. But boy, we're starting to go back together with the airplane now. We're making final wood on some of our formers on the side and things like that. This is new 1/4-inch mahogany floor in the cockpit. We're getting ready. Shortly we'll make the mahogany floor that goes back through the baggage compartment of the airplane. And so it won't be long.
Yeah, it looks like it's coming along.
Yeah.
Very, very, very well.
We even have some parts that if it were a nice day, we could put fabric on them, but we're not going to do that yet.
What about the stabilizer, the tail section? Do you guys have to rebuild that or anything?
Yeah, the left elevator, when we took the airplane apart, the drain grommets were on the top.
Yeah, okay. That's not good.
That's not good.
If you guys understand, so the fabric would have little holes in the bottom of the trailing end of the wing and the stabilizer or the elevator, so any moisture could drain out, so it doesn't hold into the structure.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
they had them on the top, so you can't drain them out.
Here's the ironic part: they never opened them. Somebody realized what they had done, and they didn't open them up, but the rings were there. But nobody ever came back with a soldering iron and just poked a hole in the bottom. And so the left elevator was in pretty bad shape. The entire trailing edge was corroded. We had to replace that. We had to repair several of the ribs in that one. The horizontal stabilizers, the leading edge was beat pretty bad. Again, keeping in mind what this airplane did in its life.
Sure.
Flying backcountry, Montana.
Real bush flying.
It looked like it had flown through trees a couple times.
It probably did.
So we cut out all the tube in the leading edge of the horizontals
Okay.
and bent up new tubing and welded all that back in. And so the horizontals are ready. One of them is ready to cover.
Okay.
The other one, as soon as we get a nice day, we can take it out and sandblast and paint it. It'll be ready to cover too. So we've done a lot of repair work on the tail stuff as well.
Okay. Will you cover this in Synconite?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. It'll be in Synconite. We're going to use the AirTech process,
Okay.
which is system that I like to use. It works really well. Boy, if you do it right, you get a great finish
Okay.
out of the airplane.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the process that we're going to use.
Well, the airplane is going to be back to pretty much original, right?
Yes.
All right.
Yep.
And when do you hope to have this done?
As soon as it's airworthy.
Okay. Well, that's a good one. Yeah, next week.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know.
Yeah.
The challenge is, when something like this comes on and you start uncovering and peeling back the onion, you just don't know what you're going to find.
Sure.
If we hadn't had to do some of the repairs and the things to preserve this airplane for longevity, we'd be a lot further down the road than what we are. But, because of some of the repairs, that took some time.
Okay.
To do that kind of stuff. So I am hoping, I'm telling the guys, by March of this year, I want to be putting fabric on some stuff.
Okay.
And so get that. Obviously, the fuselage and the wings will be the last to cover. But we're at the point where we can start putting some fabric on the ailerons, on the tail feathers, and things like that.
This gives me another question that you just talked about preserving pieces and different things like that. So what do you have to do to preserve, say, the steel tubing, the structure of the fuselage, and even the wood, the balsa wood? I guess I'm kind of asking, like, what are you using? Primers, epoxy primers, things like that?
We sandblasted the entire fuselage frame down to bare, and came back with really good PPG epoxy primer, and then a nice acrylic urethane over the top. So the black is the finish. That's where we're going to stay, and it's a great paint. It will last forever. The wood, we're using epoxy varnish.
Okay.
So it's a two-part varnish. So that way the glues on the fabric that we use will not attack the varnish.
Okay.
So that's one of the things. When we uncovered the airplane, it had been varnished, but just with one part spar varnish looked like. And all the dopes had lifted the varnish.
Oh, okay.
And so its preservation quality had deteriorated. So the landing gear and the wing struts and things like that, after all the repairs were done, we filled them with linseed oil.
Okay.
And drained it back out. So now everything is preserved on the inside and should last for quite a while.
That makes sense.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm not sure who's watching the videos, but I think that might give some people a little bit of information on what you do to preserve antique airplanes is the linseed oil, make sure, epoxy primers and things like that.
Yeah.
So you don't get any moisture inside of things.
Yeah. I know a lot of people have asked me, are you going to use zinc chromate,
Yeah.
things like that, because that's what it would have been originally. But some of the chemicals that we use nowadays will attack the zinc chromate.
Okay.
And so you need to use two-part
Okay.
epoxy for protection.
Okay.